Oh, I have no audio. Can't hear you.
Is it me?
You're there. I hear you.
Okay. Thank you for bearing with us, everybody. This is Rebel Roundup. It is a live show, as you can tell. And I just had a Skype catastrophe for about the last 10 minutes, but you get what you pay for. This is our live show wherein we talk about the news of the day, completely unscripted. I'm your host, Sheila Gunn Reid. And that right there on the other side of the screen is my friend, Lee Smurl. She's a contributor to Rebel News who is in the beautiful burg of Regina, Saskatchewan.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It is a beautiful, hoar-frosty day in Regina. So from today, 6 months from today, it will be raining. That is the old wives' tale. 6 months from the day it's hoar-frosty. Yeah, it's going to be raining. So mark your calendars. But I have a confession, Sheila Gunn Reid. I am on more cold medication than is technically legal. Okay, my thoughts are crashing around my brain like a pinball machine. Like that's how they're coming out. So just fair warning, everyone. Lisa's sick on more cold medication that is technically legal, and I have a fever. So if I start glistening like a bad dollar store birthday candle, that is why. That is why. But good morning. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here.
Be sweating like a liberal in church. So I should tell everybody what we're doing. As you know, it is live. So if there are technical difficulties, well, guess what? You're along for the ride with us. But if you are watching us on YouTube, thank you so much for sticking it out over there. Through our trials and tribulations with the Alphabet company. We are recently remonetized over there. So if you want to leave us a paid chat, they're called super chats. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, we're happy to read it on air. I can't make any promises on the chats that fall under that $5 US cutoff. There's another way you can support us too if you're watching the recorded version of the live show. Say you can't be with us right now, but you want to tune in later, you can leave a super thanks as well. As you know, we'll never take a penny from Justin Trudeau to do the work that we do here at Rebel News. So we rely on your support, and we're so grateful for it. Now, if you are watching us on Rumble, that's a great free speech platform that has always stood by Rebel News and your right to speak your mind freely. If you are watching us there, their paid chat is called a rumble rant. And again, the same rules apply. Over the $5 US cutoff, we will obligatory read it on air. If it's under that, we'll do our best to get to it, but no guarantees, no promises. I think that's it. Tariff mania royals on. So the crackdown on Canadians visiting the United States, the red, what do they call us in Bellingham, Washington? The red plague. That's what they call us at the Costco there. According to CTV News, but I think it was first reported in Reuters, the United States will require Canadians visiting for more than 30 days to register with authorities. The Federal Register showed Wednesday toughening rules as trade tensions soar between the North American neighbors. The new requirement, we hinted on this yesterday, but now the details are out. The new requirement, effective from April 11th, would harden enforcement of an existing law from which U.S. media and Canadian nationals had typically been exempt. It will likely impact an estimated 900,000 Canadians, colloquially known as snowbirds, who spend winters in warmer southern U.S. states such as Florida, Texas, and Southern Carolina. Was this written by an Easterner? Because we completely forgot Arizona, which everybody in the West, that's where they spend their summer or for their winters.
Half of my friends are right now in Arizona. Half of them right now fully are in Arizona. Yeah. And Southern Carolina, is that what that piece said? Southern Carolina,
not South Carolina.
South Carolina. Yeah. Give that person a raise, whoever wrote this. Yeah.
Southern Carolina, capitalized.
Southern Carolina. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
You know what? Again, none of this is any surprise.
No.
They're tightening up on who is in their country and for how long. And you know what? That's what I want Canada to do.
Fair enough.
I don't know how we can mad. We're not nationals to the United States. We're not citizens there. And if they impose requirements on non-citizens, such as their right as a sovereign country, and we should be forced to play along with their rules. That's what I want for Canada. So I'm not particularly upset at this. It's inconvenient for sure, but really, what is the registration going to take out of your day? I bet you it's an online form.
Well, sure. Or another process as you're going over the border, right? Like in order to gain entry, they're going to make you fill out a new form or register you there. But I thought that they were keeping track of that at the border anyway. Like every time I cross over, what is your purpose here? How long are you staying? What are you here for business or pleasure? Like I thought they were asking, I guess this is just another step in the process to make it more formal. But I do know that there are some Canadian snowbirds that are just a little bit nervous about this, just simply because they're like, well, are they going to ask us to leave? Are they going to ask
what are they registering us for?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it remains to be seen, but yeah, I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
No, I'm not particularly upset about it.
No. And considering how Canada is behaving in this tariff dispute, I could see a lot more of these T's crossed and I's dotted to come from the Americans as it pertains to our good neighbor relationship with Canadians.
Well, this is exactly what Trump said he would do. He said he would keep track of foreign nationals in the country and then determine who belongs. Again, I would love for the Canadian government to attempt to do even a little bit of this. But even when we order people deported, we just lose them in the country indefinitely.
Right. They just leave and go somewhere else and don't check in.
They just don't check in. They just leave Toronto and go to Vancouver.
Like, call me crazy, but I think that we should be doing this already. If you're not a citizen of the country, there should be a requirement that you are checking in or reporting your residence or where you are at the end. It's wild that we're not. It's wild that we're not.
Seems reasonable. Now, thanks to I guess Doug Ford, Canada is hitting the U.S. with dollar-for-dollar retaliation for Trump's unfair steel and aluminum tariffs. How do we think this is going to end? With an angry phone call directed at Doug Ford and Doug Ford having to walk back the latest thing that he's trying to do to the Americans, as was the case yesterday. It says Canada is leveling reciprocal dollar-for-dollar tariffs on U.S. steel and aluminum imports in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports that came into effect today. The federal government's countermeasures will come into effect at 12:01 a.m. March 13th. The 25% tariffs will hit steel products worth $12.6 billion and aluminum products worth $3 billion. And in addition, Canada's hitting another $14.2 billion worth of imported U.S. goods, with fresh tariffs totaling another $28.9 billion in retaliation. And just remember, this is going into the federal government's coffers. And how quickly is this hitting? How quickly is this hitting the steel industry in Canada? Again, this all goes back to not securing the border, not dealing with fentanyl, and showing no proof of work. Well, Sault Ste. Marie, Algoma Steel, layoffs started yesterday.
Yeah, I absolutely don't doubt it. I've got tariff whiplash, like the way that this is going back and forth so quickly. Doug Ford
Yes.
yesterday folded like a cheap tent, like we knew he would, like we called it yesterday.
Yeah.
But $28 billion in tariffs on a $30 trillion economy, it in the States is a drop in the bucket. Truly, it's a drop in the bucket, and it's going to do nothing but hurt Canadian jobs, decimate Canadian jobs, hurt Canadian families, and further put us in an economic situation that's untenable for Canadians because we've been abused for so long. I mean, this is just grossly disappointing, and again, another example of our federal government mishandling this dispute.
Right. I mean, I saw the other day Stelco is already considering layoffs, but Algoma right away cut 20 people right away. And I think it was Stelco who said this could cost 70,000 jobs across the industry. And instead of just dialing it down, they're, campaigning against Trump. They're accelerating it. Like,
they're accelerating, yeah.
Can everybody just say, okay, we need to slow down and talk to each other? But it appears as though none of that is happening. Like, they're imposing the tariff, as was the case with Doug Ford yesterday, electricity tariffs in the morning. And then he decided to talk to the American Secretary of Commerce, and then the tariffs were ended on electricity. Like, maybe we could do the second part first before we deal with the tariffs.
Well, they're being aggressive first. Like they're coming out of the gate to see who can be most aggressive and who can look the most aggressive, because that's what Doug Ford wants. Doug Ford wants to look like he has a big schwinger, and he's going to go into this, he's going to stand up and he's going to rah and he's making the hard decisions, and he wants to look like the tough guy. But really what it does is harm Canadian workers and harm Canadian families. 70,000 jobs is an incredible loss for the country of Canada, and those families must be just beside themselves up at night, not being able to sleep over this. And these decisions have real ramifications for real people. Sorry,
right?
Olivia, I have to just.
Well, we can go to this video of Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc announcing the tariffs that I just talked about, 25% reciprocal tariffs on additional $29.8 billion in American goods entering Canada. Let's listen.
Today, I am announcing that the Government of Canada, following a dollar-for-dollar approach, will be imposing, as of 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, March 13th, 2025, 25% reciprocal tariffs on an additional $29.8 billion of imports from the United States. This includes steel products worth $12.6 billion and aluminum products worth $3 billion, as well as additional imported U.S. goods worth $14.2 billion for a total of $29.8 billion. The list of additional products affected by counter tariffs includes computers, sports equipment, and cast iron products as examples. These tariffs are in addition to Canada's 25% counter tariffs on $30 billion of imports from the United States in response to U.S. tariffs put in place on March 4th. In addition, we learned yesterday that the United States tariffs would also be imposed on steel and aluminum content in certain derivative products. The government is currently assessing this aspect and may impose, of course, further tariffs in response to this measure as well.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Let's speed things up. Let's make things worse. And let's take more money out of the pockets of hardworking Canadians and Americans. Just awesome. Just awesome. Like these guys, again, these guys don't have a mandate to negotiate on our behalf. The government is not a functioning government while our parliament is prorogued. And I don't have a lot of confidence that Mark Carney is going to be able to negotiate us out of this. I don't have any confidence that he's going to do that, especially after and I think we're going to talk about this later, after meeting with Doug Ford. If that's who Mark Carney is getting his advice from, we're in for a world of hurt, Canada.
And it's not just the steel industry that's going to be hurt, because there's the inputs industry to steel manufacturing, the coal industry.
Oh, sure.
People completely forget about that. So domestic coal that's used for the creation of aluminum and steel, that's going to tank now because of these tariffs. But also a lot of that domestic coal mining, that coal is destined for the United States for their steel manufacturing. And what does David Eby say? Well, guess what we're going to do? We're going to put levies on coal that's being exported through the Port of Vancouver into the United States. So again, coal jobs are already under attack thanks to the environmentalist left. And so then we have this. And so you put a levy on the coal, it makes the coal unaffordable. They're going to get it from somewhere else. It's not going to be as clean burning as Canadian coal, by the way. And then look at this. David Eby wants the federal government to impose a U.S. tax or a tax on U.S. thermal coal that goes out of the province as a way to pressure the White House. So this is coal that's coming from Montana and Wyoming, and it goes to Asian markets through the Port of British Columbia, and he's going to tariff it going out the door that way. So it makes, now we're dragging Asian markets into the trade dispute here.
Well, and I don't think that they're going to stop. They're not going to stop shipping. They're just going to find another place to ship from. That is what they're going to do.
Well, also, and what's the retaliation they're going to pull here? Maybe line 5.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll cut off line 5 that goes through Michigan up into Ontario. You know, like if you're cutting off, basically it's a pipeline by rail for coal that comes from Montana and Wyoming and goes out the Port of Vancouver. If you're cutting off that pipeline because it goes through BC, line 5, cutting off line 5 because it's Alberta oil that flows through Michigan and up into Ontario and Quebec, and those guys are going to see $5 a liter gasoline if they don't rein in David Eby on this issue.
This is just wild. This is just wild. And yeah, what did we see yesterday? David Eby saying that he's going to charge road traffic coming in to BC, right? Coming into BC to get to Alaska. That's what he's doing. Like David
on a road
Eby,
the Americans built. On
right,
a road the Americans built and let us use.
And paid for. I don't know that amongst any of them they've really thought this through. And that, like, doesn't this just go to show you, Canada, that that the knee-jerk reactions of some of these provinces have the potential to really harm us, we're sort of caught in the crossfire of the bad decisions being made by Canadian politicians. And it's really quite sad. It's really quite sad.
I mean, that Alaska highway one is the one that really gets me, because the Americans paid for that highway to be built. Canada gets the benefit of it. We get the benefit of the use of it, the benefit of the commerce that's done along the way, connecting all those rural communities. Now they have to pay for the upkeep, but the deal was Americans get to use it as a trade route through our country, and it was fine. And then now we're undoing decades and decades of cooperation
Yeah.
over this, because we can't secure the border to keep
Yeah.
people and fentanyl out.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It is
Um,
wild.
this is a video from Industry Minister Francois Philippe Champagne. He was a
Mm.
short-lived leadership candidate. He says he might actually be talking sense here. Increased costs to steel and aluminum will weaken North America's economy and national security. That is true, because what's the choice here? China? Chinese steel? I think it
Yes.
is. I think that's the other
And Chinese
affordable,
aluminum.
reliable. Yeah, that's the other affordable, reliable producer. And I'm informed by environmentalists like Mark Carney that China doesn't do a good job of taking care of the environment when they're manufacturing things like steel and aluminum. But
Oh, and
that's
think of the green footprint, the carbon
ah
footprint of shipping
bunker fuel.
steel steel and aluminum all the way to Asia to make up for the shortfall. I mean, it is a if you're listening to the liberals who say that taking a road trip will kill Mother Earth in her entirety, well, how much damage do tankers and tankers and tankers full of these really heavy minerals and these really heavy products cost to get to America to make up for the shortfall that we're threatening to take away? It is
Right.
it
And
is nuts.
shipping uses largely bunker fuel, which is
Right?
like the dirtiest
Dirty.
burning,
Yeah,
the dirtiest. If you care about those sorts of things, I generally don't, but the liberals keep taxing
yeah,
my car, so
yeah,
I think they believe in it. Anyways, let's watch
yeah.
this video from Francois Philippe Champagne.
Make no mistake, today's decision by the US will increase costs for consumers. Mr. Joly was right. When you're talking to our American friends, we need to make them clear. This is going to increase the price of construction. This is going to increase the price of car. This is going to increase the price in the defense industry. It will put thousands of jobs at risk, and I would add unnecessarily. And it will weaken North America's economic and national security. My dear friends, whether you're in Canada or in the United States, we cannot let uncertainty become the new certainty in North America. That cannot stand. That will make us less competitive. That's going to weaken us, and that's going to affect our economic security and ultimately our national security.
He looks like, the content of what he was saying aside, does he not look like a South Park version of a French Canadian politician?
He really does. He really
He's a
does.
stereotype, and stereotypes are a thing because they're true.
Yes,
He's actually making sense here, but the solution should not be driving markets to Asia. Like
right.
he's making, like, the problem is true. The problem is true. This trade war does weaken both countries economically. It does jeopardize our security. But his solution is to ramp up the trade war,
It
which only makes it worse.
That's exactly right. And the harm to our economies is disproportionate. The Canadian economy, because it is so much smaller, will suffer a great deal more than the American economy, which has the buying power, right? The buying power that we just don't have in Canada. I mean, the harms to Canadians and to Canadian jobs and to the Canadian economy is just so much larger than the states, and that's one thing that these politicians don't seem to understand.
Oh, I think they
Don't.
understand it just fine. I just think they don't care, because for the liberals, it's
Oh,
a key
yeah.
to advancing their political fortunes. I think they totally get that it will be 70,000 steel jobs. I think they completely get that if they get their way with the oil patch, it'll be close to 500,000 jobs across the country, both in direct oil and gas, but also supporting. I think they understand. They just don't care because it's all
Well,
about power, and right
it's
now it's
it's
beneficial to
cost.
campaign against Trump.
That's the cost they're willing to pay.
Yeah,
70,000 jobs, 500,000 jobs, that's a cost that they're willing to pay in order to stay in power. That
yeah.
that's what it comes down to. And I mean, going back to just yesterday, with President Trump calling us their cherished 51st state. every single elected politician in Canada should be working for the betterment and the safety
Right.
and security and prosperity of the Canadian people, and that's just not what we're seeing.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
don't
not
feel
what we're seeing.
cherished. I don't feel cherished by the Liberals. It's like that
No.
old saying where it's like, a lot of you are going to have to suffer, but it's the cost I'm willing to pay. And
Right.
that's like the Liberal government right now. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Ministers Melanie Joly and Francois Philippe Champagne discussed Canada's approach ahead of negotiations with the US amid a trade war. And I guess they must defend the unionized industries at all cost. Is it Francois Philippe Champagne? This looks like Dominic LeBlanc's ruddy face. Is this the right one? Oh, there she is. Okay, we're
Oh,
good. It might be Dominic LeBlanc and Jolie. Go ahead.
Sure that we put maximum pressure to defend our jobs, defend our sovereignty, defend our way of living. But meanwhile, as a team negotiating, we need to find off-ramps. And it is just the right thing to do. So we'll do both. That conversation with Howard Lutnick is important. The ones we have, and I'll have with Secretary Rubio as well. So we're doing that in the best interest of Canadians.
Let me just add on the auto sector, because you touched something that will really, but that's going to affect hundreds of thousands of people in this country. Trust me, those who are watching are listening to that. Those who are watching, we're going to fight for the auto sector every single day. I spoke to them and I say, Canadians have been there for you. Canadians have been there for the auto sector for decades since we had the auto pact. And these companies, most of them, have long-standing commitments to this country. We're going to make sure that they abide by the terms of every single agreements we have with them to make sure we protect the jobs. We had discussion with the union leaders yesterday and with the representatives from the company, and they truly understand that the reasons they came to Canada is because we have the best worker. It's because Canadians have been there for them, and we have integrated supply chain. So I just want to be clear on the auto sector. Make no mistake that we are already on their back, saying we're going to be watching like hawks as to what may happen to the auto sector, because this is a core industry for the prosperity of this country.
Imagine hearing this and being in the oil patch right now. Like,
imagine,
go ahead.
Oh, Sheila, imagine hearing this and you are a Saskatchewan canola grower with double tariffs.
Or Alberta canola grower.
Right. Yeah. Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba canola growers, where they're facing double tariffs, 25%. So canola in Canada is roughly 50% sold to the United States, 50% to China, and both of those countries have a 25% tariff on canola right now. Imagine thinking about planting your crops this spring and knowing that you are not going to make a single dollar on any of it. It is Canada. Why are we only hearing about Ontario's precious auto sector and their precious steel manufacturers? Because they're union linked. That is why.
That's exactly it. Farmers on the prairies are not going to vote Liberals. So again, we're just the people they're willing to sacrifice. Most of you have not even heard about the canola tariffs. Wonder why that is. Why the mainstream media is not talking about the canola tariffs in any real substantive way. They're angry at the Americans, but is anybody doing anything about China?
No, seriously. This has not been mentioned. It has not been mentioned in any capacity. It's not being treated like an actual economic emergency on the prairies. And we've got literally tens of thousands of farmers looking at earning nothing this next year. And that is, I mean, the way that
look at this
100%
tariffs will take effect March 20th in response to Ottawa's tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. So they're tariffing the Chinese electric vehicles to protect the auto sector in Ontario after they're getting gajillions of dollars to build battery plants as the companies continue to go broke. And they are just throwing the entire canola sector on the bonfire of this mess. We are the world's largest exporters of canola. Canola was actually developed in Canada to deal with our short growing seasons.
Oh, tell them, tell them. You told me this. Tell them. Tell the people
Yeah.
what canola is. Go on. Tell them what it stands for.
Canola is a hybrid plant. It means Canadian oil, low acid. It was developed on the prairies to deal with our short growing seasons. There's a reason it ripens in the field after you cut it, and it's because we get too cold to have it continue to grow in the field. So it is engineered to ripen in the field. Now, whatever you think about seed oils, let's just put that aside for a second. This is a major market for Canadian farmers, and you're not hearing the mainstream media talk about it. You're not hearing the politicians talk about it. It is a sacrifice industry because they're trying to protect the auto sector, and then canola farmers on the prairies, one of which is on the call right now with you, we are just sacrificed to this mess. And we got to listen to them stand up and say, we are going to defend the automakers at all costs. I guess one of those costs is the canola industry here. And then just drilling out just away from canola for a second, imagine being TC Energy, hearing them say, we're going to stand up for the auto sector. TC Energy basically took Canada out of the name of the company because it was so tainted, because you just can't do business with a Canadian oil company at this point. Cenovus, Suncor, and Canna, all these companies, projects denied by the Liberals, or Teck oil company. The Liberals allowed it to die on the vine because of environmentalists largely organized out of the United States. These were Canadian jobs in Indigenous communities. And that wealth just vaporized. And then you got to listen to this South Park caricature of a French Canadian politician saying how important the auto sector is, and they will move heaven and earth to defend it. It's revolting to me. I think they should defend auto sector jobs, but not at the expense of these other industries, and not when they haven't done a damn thing to help anybody else.
Exactly that. Girl, I love Spicy Sheila when she starts just roaring about our egg sector, because especially on the prairies, egg is king. When egg has a downturn, our retail sector suffers, our mining sector suffer. Everything takes a downturn if our farmers aren't in the fields and making money. And this is just disastrous for the prairies. It is really, really devastating that nobody on the federal level is coming to our defense in this.
Yeah, well, there's no votes to win or lose by throwing the agricultural sector under the bus, because it is a big blue block west of Winnipeg, basically. So that they don't care. They don't care. And for people who think that farmers are rich, most farmers have jobs off the farm. In my household, we both do.
Oh, yeah.
You might be equipment rich, and you might be land rich, but you are basically farming the land to pay for those other things. A lot of years, I feel like I'm a journalist with a farming habit.
Truly.
Completely.
No. Most farmers finance their crops on a yearly basis through Farm Credit Canada. This is how, there is not enough to rotationally go year after year with your own dollars. I mean, that's how tight farmers are being squeezed. And so then you add this additional promise of not making any money on it. I mean, what's the point of planting if you're not going to be able to harvest it and make your money back to be able to fulfill your commitments? It makes no sense. And there's an awful lot of farmers right now trying to pivot really hard just to find a way to sort of keep the lights on their family farms on the prairies. Well, it's devastating.
And that's a decision a lot of us farmers made a few years ago when Justin Trudeau danced his way through India, namaste'd his way through India, and came home with a tariff on pulses. So a lot of farmers made a pivot to more domestic markets. But at the end of the day, we are the world's largest exporter of canola. And either we're going to sell that, I truly believe the world needs more Canada. More Canadian oil, more Canadian agricultural products, more Canadian manufacturing products. I believe the world is better if we are filling the void as opposed to China or the more unpleasant places of the world. More Saskatchewan potash, they need more of that too. So I think Canadian farmers should be doing this, but the government is throwing up these roadblocks every step of the way, and they're making sure that, oh, by the way, there's this so I'm going to go on a side quest right now.
Yeah.
So farmers can't now make money off their land, carrying huge mortgages, a lot of times, huge finance payments on equipment that can cost up to $1 million. So what happens? You get out of the family farm, who buys it up? Big corporations, Bill Gates, if you're in the United States, maybe China, who knows?
Chinese investors. Chinese investors. If you're really lucky, somebody will come along and put a solar farm on it, or
Right.
a wind farm.
Right.
But these are intergenerational family farms that are not finding solutions to their modern day current problems, and it is very, very sad. It's an attack on our way of life on the prairies anytime that our farmers are impacted, and it would really be nice if we had somebody sticking up for us in this moment.
Yeah. Okay, let's move ahead, because I could rant and rave about the ag sector all day.
Me too.
Tax season. We've got Dominic LeBlanc and Melanie Joly discussing why they think Mark Carney's the right guy to lead Canada through the tensions with the Trump administration. Great.
I think Mr. Carney has been quite effective in saying to Canadians that his government needs to take a firm response, a strong response. Your colleague talked about his public comments around a dollar for dollar response to these tariffs, which is what we're doing today. But I have every confidence that he's exactly the right leader at this moment to continue to take a tough, responsible, proportionate position with respect to these unjustified American tariffs, but also to lead the Canadian economy to a position where these tariffs are lifted and we have a stronger economy that's less dependent on this obviously unpredictable context.
Can I add to that? I think Mr. Carney is a serious person, a serious man, and he'll engage only if there are serious talks.
I think Mr. Carney has been quite effective in saying to Canadians.
Okay, so is that a slight at Trudeau, maybe, from Joly? I'm not sure. Like, by saying Carney is a serious man and he will engage with serious talks, I think it's both a slight on Trudeau, but also on Trump to say that he's unserious.
Right.
I think he's serious as a heart attack right now. And to consider him other than serious would be a gross misunderestimation of a gross misunderstanding, I guess, of the entire situation that we have with the Americans to say that they're not serious. Oh, I think they're stone cold serious.
Yeah, and just yesterday I posted. I'm listening to Mark Carney's book Values, and I posted a bunch of the reviews on the X platform, and it's really interesting. People that have listened to the whole thing, to be completely honest, it put me to sleep within about 4.5 minutes. It is so dry. It is self-narrated. It is so dry and so uninteresting. But basically, what they've said is this is a man who has who has a command of the jargon. So this is a jargon speaking elitist.
It's hypocritical tripe, knowing he profits from and is a shareholder of companies that own and build pipelines in overseas countries. These musings have broken economies and have not helped the climate. Trash book. Thank you, Viviana.
Yes, thank you, Viviana, from all of us. When you have communists running your currency, you're destined to starve. Mark's highest value is equality he projects into everyone and believes in group values. Communists always have purity tests and purge people that don't fall in line. Get ready for the apartheid and the gulags. Like this
Tales of a Parasite from Jesse. Thank you, Jesse.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's not a new review. That's like from 2021. So that's not like somebody who just found Mark Carney and left him a bad review. Okay. Really just fluff. An example of why people like him should stay in their own spheres. Outdated with focus on ESG values, etc. This guy loves his own. Everyone is highly regarded and an honor to have worked with. Go back to banking cabal and stay away from politics.
Yeah. We do not share the same values. Yeah. Really just fluff. an example of why people should stay in their spheres. And really what he says is it's just a validation circle jerk about him dropping names and, writing about how
Right.
everybody he knows is just so talented and so wonderful, and it was just such an honor to work with him. So I think that if that's one thing that the Americans should know about Mark Carney, is that he is very, very good at stroking those egos and using the jargon. But whether he knows, I mean, he's never participated in an international trade dispute before. So whether he can do a good job or not, and people from England, when he was the Bank of England, have described him as an absolute disaster. So it remains to be seen, Canada. But I think that we're all going to agree that Mark Carney isn't the person that we want negotiating on our behalf anyway. He's not the
No, I
right
mean,
guy.
Trump is so exciting and funny, and Carney is completely the opposite, like boring and unfunny. Now, Stephen Harper was both boring and funny, which is an interesting combination. But Mark Carney is just boring and like it's almost like all he knows is jargon. He's like an android of ESG jargon. And with
Yes.
regard to ESG jargon, it's purposefully complicated so that normal people are just like, can't translate this into English, so I'm
Right.
just going to I'm going to check out of the
Check out.
conversation. It's designed to be that way. You need
Yes.
to be able to translate the nonsense so that you can really understand what these people are trying to do to you, and it is basically
Yes.
turning you into climate serfs.
Beware of the jargon coming out of
Yes.
Mark Carney. Beware of the jargon.
Yeah, it's
See through
always
it.
funny when you listen to environmentalists talk, and it's like, no, I don't care about your big predictions and whatever, your modeling. What I know is, and what you're saying to me is, that if I give you money, the weather will be gooder, and that is definitely not how
Yes.
any of it works.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, let's hit an ad, a Rebel News ad, and then give Lisa a chance to blow her nose.
Thank
And
you.
we'll come back with more Carney news.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
Why should you join Canada's National Firearms Association? We currently have one of the most aggressively anti-firearm governments in our nation's history, promoting fear and placing blame like never before. Our rights, freedoms, culture, and heritage, it's all on the line. But we are fighting back, and there is strength in numbers. We work within the law to change the law, to defend competitors, hunters, collectors, and other law-abiding firearms owners. We can get through this. We've done it before, and we'll do it again, if you are with us. Canada's National Firearms Association. Freedom, safety, responsibility.
Okie doke. We've got a video from Mark Carney. He says he's ready to sit down with Donald Trump. So I guess Donald Trump must be serious. And Melanie Joly is just saying things to agitate the Americans in her press conference. Oh, look at Karina Gould. Look at Karina Gould in the background.
She looks like she's gonna go on one of those tree escapades in the forest.
Right.
What are they ziplining
Yes.
yeah, that's what she looks like she's doing.
This
Actually,
is the
all of them. Look at
closest,
them ziplining uniforms.
Mark Carney probably thinks that manual labor is the guy who does his gardening and not an actual thing that other people do. So this is just this is a Trudeau-esque costume, but let's hear from him.
We understand. I understand. I respect President Trump's concern for American workers and American families. We respect his concern about fentanyl. It's an issue for us here in Canada as well. And that's why the Canadian government moved very quickly with a comprehensive response that has had a huge impact in terms of controlling that issue and getting on top of that issue.
No, you didn't.
We are ready to sit down with the Americans, with the U.S. government. I'm ready to sit down with President Trump at the appropriate time under a position where there's respect for Canadian sovereignty, and we're working for a common approach, a much more comprehensive approach for trade. We're all going to be better off. Workers here in Canada, which is our concern, workers in America, which is his concern. We are all going to be better off when the greatest economic and security partnership in the world is renewed, relaunched. That's possible. We have a new government, but the same commitment, and that commitment is built rock solid on the commitment you have all made here at Dofasco.
You know, you can tell when somebody has never put on a hard hat before because all the straps are twisted and it's
all
like
crooked on your
all
head.
sideways. That's a guy who's never, ever put on a. This is Mr. Dress Up from Mark.
Look at Gould. Gould has never gone anywhere near something that'll make her hands dirty. Look at her.
No, hard hat on sideways, not fitted properly, sitting way high up on the top of her head. It's just funny.
Yeah.
I mean, look at these guys they're trying hard to look like they're invested in everyday working Canadians, but I mean, we can see right through it. These people have never done a hard day's work in their entire lives.
What I enjoy is that, like the costumeness of it all. I remember when the NDP first took power in Alberta and they went to Leduc number 1. Now, if you don't know what Leduc number 1 is, it's the reason Leduc, the town, exists. It is a historical site in Alberta. It's a museum of drilling. Like, it quite literally is a museum. And the NDP tweeted about how they went there to learn how drilling rigs work and they have a new understanding for the drilling industry. And I'm like, you guys, you're standing on a platform with a wood derrick. Do you think that's what we do? Do you think that's what they're doing out there? Like, this was their like foray into the oil patch, instead of the fact that it's like a state-of-the-art, technologically advanced, highly efficient industry. They're out there standing on a wooden derrick thinking, wow, this is how they do it, guys. We understand them. That's the same vibes I'm getting from that press conference with Carney. But what is he talking about? We're doing things at the border because you prorogued Parliament, so none of the border funding was deployed.
Right there, Sheila, right there. They have done nothing. What they've done is stand up and do some speeches in front of some fancy flags saying, we've got on it. We've made massive changes. We're taking this very seriously. And really, the only people that have taken it seriously are the provincial premiers, I think, in Alberta and Saskatchewan, by deploying marshal services and conservation officers, and what do we have, like 2 helicopters? Helicopters for 4,000 kilometers of border. Oh yeah, they're taking it. They're taking it real seriously. No, they're not. They're not.
You know, I bet the only funding they've deployed on this issue is to pay the salary of their border czar, who I forget his name because I don't think he's done anything tangible. I don't remember his name. Yes, that's his
Brasso, is that
name.
what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a career bureaucrat too that's bounced around between federal agencies, climbed the bureaucratic pole pretty fast. That slippery pole went straight up it, and you gotta ask yourself why. But he was at Fisheries and Oceans for the last several years, and that plays a part in our border security. We have
Sure it does.
Of course it does. And if all of the drugs are getting in through our ports, which are unpoliced, and the majority, the vast majority of drugs that are coming into Canada are coming in through ports that are unpoliced.
That's
There we
right.
go. That's the guy. That's
February
the guy.
11th. I haven't seen him since. Like,
Me
it was
neither.
a month later. What are
He
you
did
doing?
one press conference and said, "I'm
Right.
going to take this very seriously," and then we haven't heard a single word since. So there we have
Nothing.
it. Yep.
Even if he's just having phone calls, I want to hear him do a press conference for every phone call that he's doing. I would need proof of work.
Right.
There's none of it. Like, we need to
Well,
show the Americans that we're doing something, and I can't. We're not. We're just not.
where are the seizures at the Port of Vancouver? Where are the seizures of the drugs or the ingredients for the drugs that are coming in? Where are those seizures?
Right.
We see every couple of days we'll have an RCMP announcement saying, they caught somebody on the highway, or they caught somebody,
Right.
they did a minor drug bust, but the big amounts that are coming in through the ports are still going unpoliced and unsearched. So I don't think we're doing what the Americans want us to do.
That's like, was it last week where the police just stumbled across all those meth pills in the bush? I think it was in New Brunswick. It was just pills hidden in the bush, and they stumbled upon them for unrelated reasons. And I remember there was a press conference or a statement by this CBSA not all that long ago when they're like, we're not sure what they want us to do at the border. We sure would appreciate some direction from the higher ups, like the public safety minister. And they were like, yeah, this is it. Yeah. These are just pills in the bush. And they don't know if they were dropped there or hidden there or who's supposed to pick them up. Frankly, if I were the cops, I would have put a trail cam up and then just watched them for a bit.
Right. Wait for the people to come back to collect them,
That's
and
the
then
hunter
nab
in
the
me.
people. Yeah, then nab the people. But no. They're out there looking for a lost dog or some other thing. Who knows? Come across. They're like, oh, guys, look what we
Look at all
found.
these pills.
Guys,
It's crazy.
we've
It's just,
look at all these Ziplocs full of pills. Just hilarious. Actually, that's a really Canadian thing to have happen, isn't it?
completely.
Yeah.
Completely. They're probably peeing in the bushes, having a Tim Hortons and found the pills.
Yeah.
We've got, we talked about this yesterday. The news broke yesterday as we were on the show. Premier Doug Ford said he's dropping the 25% surcharge on electricity, but he says it's not a win. It's not, Doug. I'll tell you that. It's an embarrassing fiasco for you. Let's watch this.
Okay.
Are you concerned that suspending the surcharge that you've put on electricity will be considered a win by Trump?
No, I wouldn't call it a win whatsoever, because we still have it in our toolkit that we can use at any given time. Again, I mentioned to the governors, I apologize, we have to go to this extent. But remember, folks, we never started this war. President Trump started this economic war against Canada. It was unprovoked. I truly believed that we'd move forward and it would grow both economies, would create more jobs, more economic prosperity. Well, this has gone the other way. The economy right now, I'm concerned about it. And if a recession does happen, it's a self-made recession by one person and one person only. So I just want to move forward. I'm asking for the people of Ontario and Canada's support. I want to thank them for the thousands of messages I'm getting, even people that disagree with me. As some people say, I disagree with you 99%, but you're doing a great job. Keep going. I need everyone's support as Team Canada as we move forward, because these negotiations are going to be the toughest we've ever had.
So just to be clear, within 3 hours yesterday, Doug Ford went from saying, I will cut off the electricity
Gleefully.
If America escalates, I won't hesitate to cut off electricity to America, to 3 hours later getting called to the principal's office by Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of
Commerce.
Sheila.
Commerce.
Thank you, the Secretary of Commerce, saying, get your butt to Washington, and we are going to talk about this. Doug Ford got his hands spanked, just like we said yesterday on the show. Like, this is not going to work out for you, Doug. Making these threats are not going to work out for you, Doug. And that's exactly what happened. America is calling him okay, to Washington to talk about these things. And I don't think that this is going to go the way Doug thinks it's going to go.
No. Trump responded to this. He said, "We had a problem with Ontario, but it's fixed." So let's see this.
We had a problem with Ontario, and they dropped that when I let them know what we were going to be doing. They dropped it immediately, so I'm glad, because electricity, you shouldn't be playing with electricity. It affects people's lives there. Actually, their life. I mean, it can affect, depending on weather, it can affect their life.
Yes.
So we can't do
Yes.
that. And it doesn't make sense that our country allows electricity to be made in another country and sold into us. Who did that deal for the United States? Okay, I looked at that long ago, and I said that's not something that's very smart. So we've had a lot of bad trade policies, and yet we're doing.
Ontario's hydro, okay, is going to have to find a new consumer, because what Donald Trump just said is he's going to self-make their electricity. Why are we dependent on Canada? If they can threaten to shut it off, why are we depending on them? And we're going to make it ourselves. So well done, Doug. You just lost your hydro sector, your hydro market in the United States.
Yeah, and Trump is right. Like, imagine, let's say, for example, there's a nice little old lady that lives in your house and she needs oxygen. You are going to increase the cost of electricity, and perhaps her family can't afford to pay the power bill now, and her oxygen tank gets cut off. Like, that's the game that Doug Ford was willing to play with innocent Americans, just allowing them to be caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, and let's not forget, we're not out of winter yet. We're not out of winter
Right.
yet. The end of March and early April are well known for some screamer winter storms, and to threaten to do this in a season where if you cut off the heat and electricity to people, they will die. They will die. This is much worse than air conditioners getting shut off in brownouts, as often happens in blue states in the United States. Winter is not to be trifled with, and to do that at this time, and without any consideration, you're right, for the very old, the very vulnerable, and people that stay alive because of that electricity. It's crazy. It was a crazy threat.
Now, I want to point out the Liberal hypocrisy on this, because Mark Carney last night, right? It's the 12th. Yeah. So last night at 5:05 Mountain Time, Mark Carney tweets this. He says, "It has been more than 2 days that the supply of electricity to Gaza has been shut off. It must resume. Essentials including food, electricity, and medical supplies should never be used as political tools." Oh, Canada must work with our allies to stand up for international law, to promote sustainable peace and security in the Middle East, and to support full access to humanitarian aid for Palestinian families. As this work continues, both parties must work towards the return of all hostages. He didn't say Israeli hostages. That's who's holding the hostages, right? Is the Hamas holding Israeli hostages, not all. Like this wording indicates that there are hostages on both sides. And the completion of the ceasefire agreement. Israel is at war with Gaza. Now, they have no obligation to provide electricity, food, and supplies to the people actively trying to kill them. What is required of them is to not cut off the supply routes for other people to supply it to them. But they are under no obligation to provide food and electricity to the people who are trying to kill them. That's not how it works. But I'm reliably informed by the chief negotiator for Team Canada, Doug Ford, that using electricity against innocent people is an appropriate trade cudgel. So imagine what you should be able to do with it during war. The Liberals can't pick a lane here. Not only Carney has never said a peep about Israel this whole time. And the first thing he has said, he's weighed in on the side of Hamas here and condemned Israel for not providing its enemies electricity and food. Somebody else can do it. Talk to Jordan. They can pay for it, right? Like
Yes.
it's not Israel's problem. But Doug Ford just threatened to cut off electricity to innocent Americans governed
Well,
by a democratically elected president.
and it makes you wonder if Doug Ford or the Liberal Party or our Liberal government believes we are in wartime right now with the United States. We saw Christopher Freeland in the lead up to the Liberal leadership decision say uh, call for French and British nuclear powers to defend Canada against the United States. You just have to wonder if they believe that we are in a pre-war period with the
Right.
United States. And that should be enough to put a chill down every single Canadian spine. That is nothing to joke about. I mean, we are outgunned. We are I mean, their military is the fiercest military in the world, and we would not win. We would not win, and yet this sounds as though that is what they're lining us up for. So, are I
Right.
mean, maybe one of the mainstream media could ask them, "Are you
Right, because
suggesting that we are at war with the United States?"
but even if we were at war in the Liberals' minds with our
Mhm.
best friends and neighbors, even they would not agree that cutting off electricity was appropriate.
Right.
Right? Like that's what Mark Carney just said. But to your point that the Liberals would assume a wartime footing, I think they would, and the people they would be at war with would be Canadians, right? We saw how quickly they invoked a wartime law called the Emergencies
Agreed.
Act on Canadian citizens. Now, this is an existential threat when you've got Trump saying, well, you should just become the 51st state and we'll hammer you economically until such time as you just agree. The Liberals will see that as at least something that they could manipulate to inhibit the civil liberties of Canadians because they did it for the honkening, which is much less.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. No, but before it was the Emergencies Act, it was the Wartime Measures Act, and they invoked that against regular Canadians. We should be under no illusions that they'd be prepared to do that to us again, based on their response to the American tariff crisis.
Yes. We've got a quick, I think we've got a chat here. Did I see a chat? Yes. It's from Peace Sign Guy, gives us $10 and says, how is it that Carney can win all those ridings with virtually the same percentage? Is Elections Canada going to investigate? It sounds statistically impossible. Ezra went over this on the show on Monday about how it is basically statistically impossible. And I do have a petition calling on not just Elections Canada, but let's get the alphabet agencies involved.
Yes.
So CSIS, RCMP, to make sure there was no foreign interference. And the Liberals have said on their own that there was foreign interference. That's why they said they booted Ruby, right? Like, so we should be investigating, right? At least by their own admissions, 150,000 were allowed to vote out of 400,000 who signed up. 2 out of every 3 were excluded. And then Mark Carney, look at that. I started off with a goal of 10,000 signatures. Now I'm nearly at 15,000 signatures. If you agree with me that something is very suspicious here, why 2 out of every 3 were not allowed to vote, go to auditcarney.com.
Yeah. It is something stinks. Something stinks in that leadership race. And back in the olden days, we used to call this a political coup. We used to call these things a political coup. And now, because we have the Liberal Party of Canada trying to hang on to power, they call it a defense of democracy or defending democracy. And really what it looks like is there is some real untoward business going on in that leadership race, and it needs to be looked at. It definitely needs to be looked at. What's it going to take for those alphabet agencies, though? What is it going to take?
Well, that's the thing. They didn't do much during the last 2 elections where there was explicit evidence of foreign interference. I'm not convinced they're going to do much now, but I sure would like to shame them into doing the right thing. Now, speaking of Ruby Dalla, looks like she was in the office of the president. Did you see this tweet?
Ruby.
Um,
Ruby.
a busy day in Washington talking tariffs and taxes with senators and members of Congress. She's already in Washington. What's Carney doing? Right? She says she's standing up for Canadian workers, businesses, and our country, this time as a business owner and CEO. And she tags Doug Ford in it.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Ruby getting the heavy lifting done in Washington. I mean, it is the women. It is the women that are doing the heavy lifting on this. Ruby and Danielle Smith. But what a loss. Honestly, what a loss for the Liberal Party to have disqualified her. Truly, truly, I think they made a grievous error in judgment there.
I think the Overton window has shifted. She would not have been happy there. I don't think so. I don't think she's all that distinguishable from like a more socially progressive Tory like Michelle Rempel Garner. I think that on most issues, including the economy, immigration, and social issues, Ruby and Michelle probably share exactly the same viewpoint. I just think the Overton window has shifted too far. And like the liberals of yore are now finding themselves in the Conservative Party, just like Republicans, right? Like if you look at Trump's inner circle, many of them are former Democrats who are like, nope, I don't belong here anymore.
RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, they came from they were leftists.
Elon.
Joe Rogan, like all of them were former leftists, and they all say very much the same thing. I didn't leave the left left me, and that's what we're seeing in Canada now too. Yeah, with Ruby would find a nice home in the Conservative Party. She should cross the floor.
She'd do a real number on Brampton, that's for sure. We talked about this yesterday about this police podcast in Toronto. It's called Project Olive Branch, where they're supposed to be, I don't know, reaching out across communities, but they seem to be making excuses for terrorists. Like the olive branch, like the extension of peace, but they are making excuses for people who commit acts of war. Toronto police, they've deleted it, according to National Post journalist Brian Passafume, who's one of the great ones over there. He says, Brian says, Toronto police tell me they've deleted an episode of a podcast where two uniformed Muslim liaison officers praise October 7th for an increase of converts to Islam and implied that criticizing anti-Israel rallies equates to Islamophobia. I didn't even hear that portion of the podcast, but my good golly.
The crazy thing is the levels of approval that this would have had to go through on the official police side to get this published and pushed out into the public is like, I mean, it just can't be overstated. This had levels of approval before it was ever released, right? Like they didn't just record a live podcast and hit publish. It would have gone through the communications office. It would have gone through the many layers of approvals, and that it made it into the public. Now, when the apology non-apology,
right,
what it was a humongous word salad saying, we acknowledge that people might have been upset by this, but really what they were apologizing for is that they got caught. That is what they were upset about, that they had to take time out of their busy DEI schedule to make a statement. But it never should have, I mean, it just has to go back to, it never should have seen the light of day. As a matter of fact, it should have been caught in their approval process and said, right, guys, like this is way offside.
Right.
This has the potential to blow up in our faces. And because it wasn't, it just makes you wonder, what are they doing over there? What are they doing over there?
But does it surprise you, or is it any wonder why these anti-Israel protests are allowed to go on the way they are, blocking the street, blocking the roads for prayer? and the police bringing coffee over to the Hamas protesters in Jewish neighborhoods where they're standing on the overpass, intimidating Jews coming into their neighborhood. Like, they can tell me all they want that this is about Israel and Zionism, but why are you in the Jewish neighborhoods of Toronto? What do they have to do with anything?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
No,
So
Toronto,
it makes a lot of sense. Like, if this is the sentiment that they are incubating over
right.
there at Toronto Police, of course we're going to see uh crazy marches in our streets with bloodthirsty, bloodthirsty heathens
Yeah.
making trouble for the rest of the city, and in many provinces this is happening. So
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it just goes to show you that we have a two-tier policing problem here in Canada too.
Yeah, Toronto Police, under Chief Myron Demkew of Private Meeting
Here it
with
is.
Justin Trudeau fame, he says, "We recognize the Jewish community's profound pain and anguish as a result of October 7th and the ensuing rise of anti-Semitism. I've personally heard from the community about the impact of this podcast, and I'm truly sorry. Our commitment to protecting our Jewish communities remains unwavering." I don't
What
think you
this
are protecting them at
And
all.
I don't think you're truly sorry, to be completely honest. If you were
No,
truly sorry,
it would
this
never would have went
statement,
up.
well, it never would have gone up, but also this statement would say the people involved have been put on administrative leave, and we
Right,
are doing a full investigation about how this happened. That's what would have
right.
if they were truly sorry, we would see administrative leave announcements, and we all know that hasn't happened, or they would have told us. So I don't think they're truly sorry at all. I think they're truly sorry they got caught. I
Yeah,
think they're
yeah.
truly sorry that they got called out on it, but I don't think they're truly sorry for saying it
No, no, that's exactly it. They thought it was
or for the
perfectly
sentiment.
normal to say those
Yeah,
things. They thought
yeah,
that what they were saying, like, "Oh, thank goodness for October 7th because look at how many more Muslim converts they are."
yeah,
So just 1,200 dead Jews and 240 kidnapped ones. Those are just the costs of doing business. Those are the costs of the registration drive. Is that it?
yeah.
Cops of Toronto? I mean, I don't even want people on the street who believe that. And yet those are the
No,
ones packing heat.
yep, that's exactly right. Those are the people that have the authority in Canada to well, they have wide and overarching authority in Canada to make decisions on behalf of the citizens, and this is the kind of behavior that really degrades the public's trust in those policing institutions.
Yeah, it's a shame because there are lots of good cops out there,
Yeah,
um, that we know and love, and, it's a shame that they have to wear the same sorts of uniforms as these 2 guys. I mean, it's chilling that these kind of police have a monopoly on violence. It's very chilling. We've got a clip, just came in from CHCH News, so that's, Vancouver Island, I think. Um, it's Mark Carney in Hamilton. Sorry, CHCH is in Hamilton. Auspicious start for PM designate Mark Carney in Hamilton. No questions taken from reporters, and his handlers told the camera operator pooling the event to shut off sound when he was inside talking to workers. Why? Because I bet you these blue collar workers gave this guy a piece of their mind. Let's watch this. Wow. Now, the mainstream media is going to be upset about this, obviously, because they're not used to being treated this way. But welcome to the jungle, friends. This is how we are always treated in the independent media landscape. This is just dealing with the liberals. This is how we have to work. You can see how shocked and appalled they are that they're being treated this way, but they've never said a word, uttered a word, when the rest of us are.
right, right. Well, because they're corrupt, Sheila, because they are
Mhm.
corrupt. It would be a real bitter pill to swallow for the mainstream media to be treated like independent media in Canada. And I think they're going to get I think, well, just based on these last several weeks and the way Mark Carney has not been forthright with the press in Canada, has been unwilling to answer any questions off the, you know what I mean, non-scripted questions, and his unwillingness to face the public. I think we're going to be in for it, Canada. I think we're going to be in for it with this guy. Yeah.
It is remarkable though to see these same journalists who just like can't find their tongues when Mark Carney's throwing out independent journalists right beside them to take their outrage to the internet when it happens to them. And let me be the first to do what they won't do. I condemn the way the mainstream media press is being treated by Mark Carney. Because whether it happens to independent press or the mainstream media, it's not right. Now, that is a statement you will never hear from the parliamentary press gallery when one of us gets excluded.
Yes, and so to most Canadians, the vast majority of Canadians, Mark Carney is a complete unknown. We don't know a lot about him. We haven't heard from him. In his elitist circles, he's very well known, and the big money bureaucrats sure know a lot about him, but regular everyday Canadians do not. And it is important that we do get to know him, his authentic self. This is by subjecting him to questions off the cuff that he doesn't have time to prepare for or script or in other ways manipulate, so Canadians can make an appropriate choice come election day. And so the mainstream media, could get on that real quick, could get on the same train as we've been on real quick by starting to ask some really tough questions. And I think that that's the important thing to note here is when they're telling you you're not allowed to ask the questions, you are to ask them anyway, demand the answer anyway. I mean, that they would ask them to turn the sound off, or that they would tell them that they're not answering questions. Ask them anyway, demand answers of this man. We Canadians deserve to know who he is.
Actually, I'm shocked that although I shouldn't be shocked, but I am surprised that the camera operator complied, because if they tell you you can't see the thing, the public must see the thing. Right. The public must see the. Here's what I think, though. I don't think Mark Carney had to discriminate against all media, because I think he was worried that independent press might be there. So on the parliamentary precinct, he knows he's not going to encounter someone who might ask a difficult question. So he's happy to take questions there. I think when he's out in the world, you are going to see him uniformly exclude all media, because one of us might get in there and ask a question, and he can't tell the difference quite yet. That's what I think happened.
That is wild. I think you're hitting it right on the nose, Sheila. I think you're hitting it right on the nose. Yeah.
Speaking of the nose, I'm sure yours is running, so we'll wrap up the show right away. But I wanted to just, now that we're on the topic of the free press, the Independent Press Gallery, President me, we issued a statement this morning because, as I just mentioned, the Parliamentary Press Gallery controls access to politicians on the parliamentary precinct. So this is a cabal of media journalists, and they get together and decide, you know who's going to get to talk to the politicians? Us, not you. And so they don't allow the independent journalists in, protecting their monopoly, right? So if a press conference is being held sort of at the House of Commons or around the House of Commons, you're going to hear a lot of boring or anti-conservative questions being asked. Never the ones you want to know, like, hey, what's your association with Ghislaine Maxwell, Mark Carney? You're not going to hear that if the press conference is on the Parliamentary Press Gallery, because they control who gets in and gets out, which is outrageous that they've given the cabal of our competitors the decision-making over who we get to talk to. Like, that is wild. But the Independent Press Gallery, the IPG, stands in stark contrast to the PPG. And the IPG this morning had to issue a statement denouncing the Parliamentary Press Gallery for their treatment of Canada's largest firearms magazine. So I'll go through a little bit. The Independent Press Gallery condemns the Parliamentary Press Gallery for barring Caliber magazine, Canada's largest firearms publication, from attending the Trudeau government's March 7th gun ban announcement, led by Associate Minister of Public Safety Rachel Bendayan. Despite requesting access well in advance, Caliber magazine was ignored. When they followed up by phone, officials stalled, claiming they needed approval from a manager who is conveniently unavailable. Then, just 15 minutes before the press conference, they were told to complete an arbitrary accreditation form, while officials admitted they had already researched the publication and its social media presence. This blatant exclusion follows a pattern of press censorship under the Liberal government. The PPG has repeatedly blocked independent journalists from accessing press conferences held on the parliamentary precinct, ensuring only select media maintain exclusive access to politicians and officials. Independent outlets like Rebel News and True North have also been denied access to government events, allowing the PPG to shield politicians from tough questions. By barring Caliber magazine, the PPG ensured that stakeholders most affected by this gun ban, firearms owners, retailers, and legal gun users, were excluded from the conversation. The IPG calls for an immediate end to these exclusionary practices and demands transparent, apolitical accreditation for all journalists. Sincerely, me. So not only do we denounce politicians, we denounce other media organizations who are effectively censoring other journalists. So anyways, Caliber magazine doing good work.
Way to go, Caliber magazine. We're big fans of your publication. But further to this, in the United States, they have opened up their White House press gallery to independent journalists, to content creators, to non-mainstream journalists. And what we've seen is the door blown open on transparency, because when you have a closed, like a sort of cloistered press, you never get out of the validation circle. Like, all they do is sort of ask the same version of the same question, or different versions of the same question. When you allow especially independent journalists and content creators to ask the questions, you get a much greater breadth of information. And this is what we should be. What they're doing in the United States is absolutely incredible, and we should be endeavoring to support that here in Canada. The mainstream media may not be brave enough to ask the questions that the independent media would, but they should still welcome those questions. Welcome those questions. They will benefit from those questions being asked and answered. Like, it's sort of a copacetic relationship that could be working here. But because they're interested in the mainstream media right now, in keeping their monopoly safeguarded, the freedom of press in Canada does not exist. It does not exist.
Yeah, if they're scared of ruffling the feathers, that's fine. I'll do it. If you want to remain in a cozy relationship with Dominic LeBlanc and get invited to all of his stuff, that's fine. Let me come in and make trouble. It doesn't hurt you at all. But they just want to they're like the candlestick makers at the dawn of the electric age, and they're still trying to force everybody to have the candles in their house.
Right.
Things have changed. The new media is taking over where the old media failed, to quote Andrew Breitbart, and they haven't even realized that their industry is dead and they were part of the disease that killed it.
Well, I think they might be catching on, in that without their humongous federal subsidies, they would cease to exist within the better part of a week. But this is nothing but self-serving. The same self-serving behavior that we've come to grow and detest in Canada over these last 9 years. I mean, subsidizing the media in Canada was the end of press freedom in Canada, and there should be no journalist or outlet or company that's at all funded by federal or provincial dollars. None at all. If you can't figure out a way to make it work and to pay for yourselves, well, then you're not doing a good enough job. You're not working hard enough. We here
Right.
at Rebel News know this. We know this
We
better
do.
than anyone. So
We do. And I think because we have the business model that we do, we rely on crowdfunding, it keeps us connected to our people. Like
heck
we
yeah.
we have to know what the people want and the stories that you care about,
Oh,
because if you don't care about the stories that we're doing, there's no us. And so I think it keeps our finger on the pulse of Canadians.
100%. We are engaged in the feedback loop of our viewers. We want to tell the stories that are important to you, and those are the ones that are most important to us. So glad to do it, Rebel fam. Glad to do it on your behalf. Thanks so much for your support.
All right. On that wonderful note of the Mutual Appreciation Society of Rebel News and its viewers, I think we should wrap up the show. Lise, thanks for toughing it out 2 days back to back while enduring a cold. But your contribution to the show allows David Menzies to be out in the world doing what David Menzies does best. So we just appreciate you so much for it.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure, you guys. It is my pleasure. And I will see you here next week.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, back Tuesday. The show, as always, is going ahead 11 a.m. Mountain, 1 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow, I'm not sure who the hosts are tomorrow, me and somebody else, I forget. But thanks to Olivia and Efron behind the boards for keeping the show going, and everybody who works behind the scenes to make sure the show is there when you want to watch it. Thanks to everybody who pitches in. Thanks to all of you who share the show with somebody you believe needs to see it. It helps us get around Justin Trudeau's intense internet censorship. And as my friend David Menzies always says, stay safe and stay sane.
This is not going to be a tough battle. In my opinion, not going to be tough. Just like when Ontario charged us, everybody said, oh, they just charged. I said, this will be won in 1 hour. And they announced what we were going to do, and they withdrew their little threat. And what they don't say in Canada is that 270%, have you ever heard that? We have tariffs on dairy products from Canada of 207%, going up to 400%. You never hear that. Canada's absolutely one of the worst. And we, when I say worst in terms of charging tariffs. The dairy products, they charge our farmers 240, 250, 270, and 400%. Okay? Think of that for dairy product. And we charge them like peanuts. You know why? Because we've been improperly run for so many years. I had that all settled in my first term. But then, of course, Biden, he let everything go to hell.